Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 23 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 3 today for the Australian Grand Prix in Season 1. If you guys did miss the previous one at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one, because we really improved off the first episode into that second one at Jeddah, a circuit I'm more comfortable at, and we had some really great fighting, so many three-wide moments for not just me, but also the AI as well. We saw the two Red Bulls jockeying for position with Carlos Sainz, and Verstappen had a disaster at that one, and we got as close as we could to points with a pretty decent P11. We're getting there, and today might be the episode where we can go for some actual points for the first time in this season, because we've got a whole raft of upgrades you saw there on that page. We've got 4 pending upgrades. I think 2 or 3 of them are due to come in time for this Australian Grand Prix, and then one of them left over the next episode in Baku. But 3 upgrades coming in for this Grand Prix is going to be massive, and having those 2 chassis upgrades coming in is a real plus. I was very worried about one of them or both of them failing on the card, to be honest, but thankfully they both come in, and you can see we now unlock some other upgrades, including the very first tyre wear upgrade that we can do, and we're absolutely gonna look to go for that one. That will come in time for Baku. That will be quite important, because I got the feeling from Jeddah and also Bahrain there was an inkling of it. Clearly the official F1 teams have much better tyre performance than we have at the moment. It also might just be me kind of learning maybe how I can save the tyre a bit more over the stint. You know, when you get a fresh set of tyres in this game, you have instant grip. You can go really well, but I'm noticing compared to last year's game and even the games before, there's a much bigger drop-off of actual, you know, just actual out-and-out performance. Not necessarily you feeling the tyres going off a cliff, because that's not really a thing anymore in this current set of Pirelli, you know, the way they make the tyres basically. There's no drop-off like we saw a couple of years ago, but there's just progressive, you know, a lack of actual lap time there produced by the compounder tyre. And compared to the other teams around us, especially we saw with Ocon at Jeddah, you know, the McLaren and Piastri at Bahrain, I think the other teams have much better kind of consistency over that stint. So I think delving into tyre wear compared to previous games earlier than later is going to be quite key for me, at least personally. I don't know if any of you are kind of, you know, feeling that same sort of feeling in the car with your, you know, particular My Team saves, but those 3 upgrades coming in are quite big for us, because it takes us over Alpine apparently on paper on the R&D chart. McLaren bring even more upgrades than we do, so they also skip ahead of Alpine, but Alpine slip behind both us 2 teams as all 3 of us branch away a little bit from the pack of Haas, Williams, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri. That probably won't stop one of the Alfa Romeos or the Haas or Albon in the Williams for being present with us in the race, it seems, because the AI can make a difference, you know, driver to driver. It's, you know, that can be a big factor, and we've seen that so far with McLaren and Lando, and also with Albon and Williams, and that differing tyre strategy that some teams are going for. But good to see the signs, at least, that in theory we're making good progress early on here to get ahead of a team that we've been battling so much so far, or at least I should say driver of Ocon at Jeddah, and then also, you know, keeping up with McLaren as much as we can. But you saw not the most ideal start to Saturday with a small little fault on the car. We got out eventually though, and it was a bit of a shaky first lap there with quite a lot of oversteer. By default, the setup here at Albert Park is quite lower on the wings compared to Jeddah and Bahrain, and immediately I was feeling that and struggling a little bit with the car. So on the second run, obviously parc fermé, you can't change the rear wing, but I did put the front wing up by 4 clicks. So that is quite a difference from front to rear then in terms of the wing level, but it made all the difference. As you can see, I'm going to gain nearly about 9/10 maybe by the end of the lap. A much better final corner, still a bit of oversteer there and a wobble as we have to catch the car, but it's going to be 8.5 I would say then as we cross the line. But that's a huge improvement, and that makes a night and day improvement from where we are at the start of the session. So we end up in P13 again. Seems to be a very familiar number for us so far this season in Q1. We make it through into Q2, but I think there's more time to find on the table, and that second lap was so much more comfy with that front wing change. So in the middle of the race weekend, can't be too afraid to change the front wing just to give us a little bit more, you know, front biting and sensitivity. It does make the rear a little unstable. As you can see, we slide and drift the car through there. That was more because I locked the rear, to be honest, more than anything, as we also put the brake bias a bit more towards the rear end to stop any front locking, which was hampering me in the first lap in Q1. And then finally not having a huge slide moment through the last corner on this run in Q2 and across the line. And it is 8/10 off whoever's top right now. That'll go to P9. So not looking too bad, but our second run wasn't great because it's on a used set of tyres, and then the rear end was all over the shop there. So I just bailed on that lap. But it's because I used 2 sets of softs in Q1. So I only had 1 fresh set in Q2, and we used that on the first run. So that is going to be our quickest lap time. And to be honest, right now, it's P11. It was P9 for a second there, but Hamilton is out of the session. So I don't know what's going to happen with his lap time. Did he cross the line? I think he may have, but it's a crash with the Williams into turn 1, and he is out of the rest of the session. But I think he actually just crossed the line to set his actual new lap time, so it might not matter. He actually might knock us out of Q2 despite not continuing on. And then Alonso got caught up in Hamilton's stricken car. So Alonso and Hamilton both set their times and then immediately crashed out of the entire day after they set their lap times. So annoyingly, we are going to be knocked out. It's a highest qualifying position for us so far in this career of P11, but it's frustrating because Hamilton and Alonso won't be able to compete in Q3. So they've taken up 2 slots in the top 10 shootout. They're not even using. But the way the rules are, you know, I still didn't produce a lap time that got us through into the top 10. So it doesn't matter if they're not going to be out. So it's going to be a top 8 shootout. And we'll have Hamilton and Alonso for company on the starting grid. But very promising stuff with those 3 upgrades coming in to be the best grid slot we've had so far of P11. So let's go to the race. I have a feeling points are on the cards now in this 3rd race. Come on, let's do it.
Welcome to Melbourne, and welcome to the Australian sun. We're still getting used to some track revisions here, but the core hasn't changed. This is a beloved classic of the F1 calendar, and it's time for the Australian Grand Prix. The Melbourne circuit is certainly one that needs to be taken seriously. It's a combination of slippery surfaces and difficult corners, making it a very tricky track when it comes to overtaking. Drivers find it hard to pass and will need to take full advantage of those DRS zones if they want to have any hope of breaking through. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. A fantastic effort from Charles Leclerc yesterday, and it's put him on pole, and a very happy Carlos Sainz will start 2nd. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Verstappen, Perez, Russell, Norris, Ocon, Gasly, Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, the owner driver, Stroll, Tsunoda, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Bottas, Joe, Oscar Piastri, Iwasa, Albon, De Vries, Albon. And now it's time to head down to the track. And what would any Grand Prix weekend be without the one and only Natalie Pinkham? Now, let's talk about Charles Leclerc.
What a quality performance. The big question, though, is how does that translate on race day? Can they hold on to that lead? And, of course, it's looking very close here today. A lot is going to be riding on those first few corners. And then the question becomes, who can manage their tyres so they're in a good position to push hard towards the end?
We're on the cusp of the top 10 as we start this race off for the 5 red lights after the formation lap. So, you know, it's there for the taking. There's going to be a race where we can get some points. I think it can be this one. We've got good pace, and we're going to try a bit of a different strategy this time. We're starting on the soft compounder tyre because I had a fresh set because we didn't go into Q3. And like others behind me, we are starting on softs. And I'm going to try and do what Albon's done. And, you know, his strategy so far in this career, the first 2 races, has been using a softer compound to get that track position, get ahead on the first stint, and then try and defend his way into some points or positions at the end of the race. I don't think we have the tyre wear to go onto medium tyres. but we can go on to hards after the soft tyre stint, and hopefully this first stint will put us in a position to then defend that position, a points-paying position on the hard tyres. At least that's the hope. That's the plan. Let's see if we can execute it. As we gear up for 5 red lights here down under, the Australian Grand Prix is underway. Bit of wheel spin for us, but not as much as Pierre Gasly, who bogs down, and we overtake him and Alonso. It's 4 wide into turn 1 between Norris, Perez, Russell and Ocon, and we make 2 overtakes. Hamilton boxed in on the inside. Norris gets squeezed out, and we're up into P7. We've got a nosebleed here. We're flying high, and we're going round the outside of Ocon. We're on the soft compound. He's on the mediums, so we should have that extra grip, and it's worked. The plan to start on the softest compound to get the track position has worked out. We're up into P6. That is absolutely, I gotta say, a biblical start that was. P11 to P6, Bosch. Absolutely booked in, and now we just got to try and see out the rest of this Grand Prix though. We've got a long way to go, a long way to go, but we're going to try our best. Right now seeing Russell attack Sergio Perez. Verstappen's not had a great start. It was a front row lockout for the Ferraris, who qualified very well, but we know the race pace is there for Red Bull, and Verstappen is looking to make a move on Carlos Sainz. Leclerc still leads the way, and Sainz defends well. Verstappen squeezed out so much that now Perez has a run on him. Is Verstappen a little bit off put from maybe the horrendous weekend he had at Jeddah? We know the focus for AI and how well they do on the F1 games these days is all about momentum from race to race, so Verstappen might just be on the back foot now after that horrendous race he had last time out, because he's now down to P4 and once again finds himself behind his teammate and struggling. We're keeping up with Russell so far on lap 2 with a few moments of oversteer. This setup with the heavier fuel certainly is a little bit unstable on the rear end, and I can very much tell we're lacking some downforce in some of these higher speed corners around Albert Park, but we're trying our best to stick with Russell behind Ocon, holding up a train that he's leading. Hamilton right underneath his rear wing, but he should be able to overtake him with DRS now. Ocon defends the inside line, sends Hamilton the long way round, and I think this might be the unleashing of the 7-time world champion, as he's now in clean air and will surely catch up to us sooner rather than later, but we're not going to fight him. Our fight is with the car he just overtook. Ocon, even Norris maybe. Tsunoda's up there in P10 in that Wagoner Plus of an AlphaTauri car. How's he done that then? He's P10 ahead of Alonso, even ahead of both Aston Martins, who are having a nightmare race as Lando Norris tries to overtake Ocon with no success into turn 1, but there's a second bite the cherry of DRS for the Brit to try and come knocking on that French door, but Ocon so far blocking off the McLaren efforts and giving us a bit of breathing room to remain in 6th place, and well, eventually it'll be P7 I think, because Hamilton, it's not a if, it'll be when he overtakes us, because he will overtake us, and very much like you see in real life F1, I'm playing this tactically. There's no point fighting Hamilton. He's not in our race. If this was like if this was the last lap of the Grand Prix, maybe there's a point to fight him. But so early on in the race, there's no point slowing up our own pace just to hold up a faster car. As right now, speaking of a faster car, Carlos Sainz is trying to get past Verstappen, as Perez and Verstappen have got into P2 and 3. Leclerc still leads by 2.1 seconds though, so he's got a nice gap to the Red Bull car, so we'll see about that as we now catch back up to Norris, and he overtakes Ocon, so he's going to unleash the pace he's got in the McLaren. Side by side for Alonso and Tsunoda. Alonso the long way round, Tsunoda now to the outside of the final corner as we go back to our POV, and here comes Lewis Hamilton on the inside, and we don't really put up a fight. We don't even deploy too much ERS because he's not in our fight. We're going to use him for a bit of DRS to pull us along, but our focus is already switching to Norris and Ocon. It may have been a fantastic effort on lap 1 to get up to P6. That's not what we're aiming for. I'm aiming for, you know, a P9, a P10 by the end of this race. That's where the pace of the car maybe is basing off qualifying. So we're going to try and do our best to do that. And to be honest, you can see the evidence there because Norris has already caught up to us. These soft tyres are already feeling second hand as we squeeze him to the inside. We go back to the racing line. Where is he? He's nowhere because we squeezed him so much so that he got so unsettled into the corner. So Good bit of defensive work there. We're going to need more of that to hold back these cars. You know, in theory, maybe Alonso should be able to kind of cut through all of us and overtake us, but for now, he's behind Norris. He's got past Ocon, but we'll just try our best to assess the situation of who's worth fighting, who's not. But I can say already, although that, you know, tyre strategy onto softs was very good on lap 1, now on lap 8, it's ropes. The soft tyres feel so bad on this car, so very much looking forward to going to the hard tyres once again on the second stint. But meanwhile, behind, Alonso struggling to get past Lando Norris. Can he make a move with his second DRS zone? Don't think so. He's not too close to him, and they're all pretty much nose to tail. Good to see, though, 3 different teams, 4 including our own, fighting for points from P7 down to P10. Alonso and Norris looking to make moves. Norris darting about, looking to defend and attack us as we slide our way through turn 1 as the rear locked up. I thought that was pretty smooth, to be fair, though, as a drift goes into turn 1, but of course not the quickest way to go through turn 1. And as we go on to lap 11, we've really stretched this soft tyre stint as much as we can, but again with another big rear end slide, and I think that's more from even, you know, a lack of just grip on the rear end, to be honest, as now Alonso is making a move on Norris, but Norris darts down the inside of us with a dive bomb. We lock up on the front right to try and give him enough room, because otherwise we would have just gone into the side of him, and we're going to keep the P7 for now. But absolutely now's the time to box. You can see how poor my grip is. We couldn't even make that right-hander at pretty much flat out as you usually do in qualifying, so it's time to come in onto the hards. Yes, maybe not the mediums like others are choosing to go onto, but we are still going to get an undercut on the cars that are continuing on, even on those mediums. So this is exactly what Albon did, exactly what, you know, Ocon did at Jeddah in the previous 2 races. Going early, getting that undercut, and then just trying to get track position and defend your life out till the end of the race. So we come out in some decent clean air, just ahead of Valtteri Bottas, a man who's very much had a much worse race at Australia compared to Jeddah, as he's nowhere in last place there as it was until Lance Stroll pit. But now we're going to look to make a move on De Vries. He's still going on a set of soft tyres. Kudos to him, because I definitely could not take those softs to lap 13, but it means it's easy pickings for us as we get through this traffic effectively. No blue flags, of course, so we have to get the overtakes done fair and square. Sargent on the medium tyres continues on. He's really slowing us up through the last corner, so we have to get this move done on this straight. As George Russell's out! Russell's out, and remember, he was ahead of us before the pit stop, so that's a free position. So effectively we could be back up to P6. You know, we were in P6 before Hamilton overtook us initially, so now that one of the Mercedes cars is out, by the time everyone makes their pit stops, we could find ourselves in P6 on the hard tyres, and then looking to defend as much as we can, and then we just see where we end up, basically, kind of like Albon did at Jeddah. Just see where you end up. Hopefully don't have a horrendous last sector where you lose 2 positions in one corner like he did on the Alfa Romeos. As we climb up to P8 so far, Piastri and Gasly still yet to pit, so yeah, we will get up into P6, and I'm actually going to overtake Piastri fair and square on track before he even makes his pit stop, I think, because we're within DRS. We've got a good amount of ERS, but we're not going to use it. Going to save the battery for later on in this race. DRS will be enough to go around the outside and then even get to the apex first, so really satisfying move on Piastri. And you can tell, you know, from Bahrain, I was defending for my life against Piastri, whereas now we've overtook him with confidence. You know, we're a pit stop ahead of him. You know, we're definitely getting quicker and quicker as we just turn laps and get used to this game. Meanwhile, lap 18, Leclerc leads the race by 5 seconds to Verstappen, who's 5 seconds ahead of Perez. So all that kind of bit of, you know, fighting and traffic for both Red Bulls has not helped them out, and it actually might gift Leclerc the lead from pole position here, and I think he could go on to win this one, as that gap is quite large for them to close up, to be honest. Behind them, you've got Hamilton, ourselves, Norris, Alonso, Ocon, P9 ahead of Tsunoda. Tsunoda is, called his car a Wagon R Plus earlier. To be fair, he's doing a very, very good job. And he actually might go for a move here, Yuki will, as he goes through the high-speed chicanes. And then you got the two Haas cars, quite lofty in P11 and 12 compared to where they were in previous races. But there goes Tsunoda round the outside of Ocon. That's going to annoy the heck out of him. And that's because Tsunoda right now is on medium tyres. So right now he has the better grip. But eventually I think Ocon will re-overtake him because the tyre wear will come back to bite Tsunoda, as it will to me maybe on the longest stint on the hard tyres, because we pit the earliest out of everyone in this pack. So we are going to feel the tyre wear, and we already are on lap 19 anyway because Lando's caught up to us. And again, like with Hamilton, we've got to pick our battles. Are we in a battle with Lando? No, not really, if we're being honest. So Lando's going to go through. We kind of let him by because we're not racing him. I would love to say we are racing him and, we can defend against him for, another 10 laps. But it's not going to happen. It's just going to slow up our own race. So we don't fight him, and we're not going to fight Alonso. Because like I said, we're aiming for about P9 or 10. It might be P8 now because of Russell's retirement. And that's still an amazing result for us as a team, as a driver, this early on at the start of the My Team series. So Alonso and Norris fly through, and you can see Lando's already 2 seconds up the road, and that's basically in just one lap or so. So the pace difference is night and day between McLaren and Aston compared to us. So that's why we've taken that decision not to fight them. Now we look to hold position. Ocon, we will fight because I think we should be on pace with Alpine. The R&D chart says so. And, I think we can hold them up enough because we're now on to the last couple of laps of this Grand Prix. We've got 4 to go. Absolutely, we should be able to try and defend against Ocon to keep P8 because, there's not enough laps now for us to really hinder the rest of our race because, where else are we going to go, basically? So those have been the strategic decisions we've been making through this race just to try and ensure we can get these points. You can see I'm really struggling now on these hard tyres. The engine is also a little bit worn, apparently. I think that's just the gearbox, though, so not the actual engine performance, but we're having to really tactically defend Ocon, squeeze him to the inside now as he goes for the move, but we're going to pull out to the racing line, and like we did with Lando earlier in the race, we're going to be able to keep our racing line because his line's compromised by being that tight. But at the moment, retirement! Oh, yellow flags were out. I didn't know what for. Lando Norris is retired. And that is maybe a bit of karma for us letting him through earlier. It's come back to pay his dividends. There was no point fighting him. Didn't matter. He was going to retire anyway as he has a failure. So we're up into P7. Up to P7. This is amazing stuff. So now with 2 and a bit laps to go, absolutely we have to be the Minister of Defence here to try and bag a P7. This would be absolutely amazing stuff this early on in this season. And we've really nailed this strategy and we've nailed the right calls of when to defend, when to not, and now we're here on the last lap. We move a little bit to block off Ocon, and ultimately he doesn't really make much of a move into turn 1. Now this is the crucial point. Ocon's going to have that run with the second bar of DRS on the outside. We brake early because we just don't have the grip to brake that late, but we're going to squeeze Ocon out, not fully off circuit, gave him enough room to work with, but we just get the elbows out to keep P7, and hopefully now we can just see this through to the end. He maybe has one more opportunity to make an overtake right at the end of the lap. I don't think he'll make a move into the far chicane as Charles Leclerc wins the Australian Grand Prix. He's broken the Red Bull cycle. It was Verstappen from Perez, and now Leclerc is the 3rd different race winner this season, and Ferrari have pulled it out the bag with a double podium as well, with Sainz in 3rd as we defend Ocon. Like I said, didn't make a move into the far chicane, but this is now where he can make one final attempt at stealing this P7 away from us. We're side by side, neck and neck into that corner, and we give him actually a lot of room to work with, but he still doesn't have the facilities to overtake us round the outside, and into the final corners will be nice and easy. Defend the line, block him off. We're literally so slow. The tyres are so worn out, but we're going to come through for P7. The first points on the board in this career series, and it's P7 for our number 7 on the car. Our lucky number 7. Get in there. Come on. Down under, we've got the points.
A great race then, and a fantastic victory here at Albert Park. So Natalie, what do you think helped them deliver this result?
I want to know if that was as easy as it looked. An absolute masterclass today.
Here come our winners now, a thrilling race and a tremendous effort by Ferrari. Their history is well known, so it's no surprise to fans the world over to see them come out on top once again.
A fantastic victory for Charles Leclerc, double podium for Ferrari. That's going to be quite huge. So, although real life may not have a title fight on whatsoever in the Drivers' and the Constructors' Championship, thankfully here in the game, Ferrari are putting up a fight to Red Bull and Verstappen, and it's going to be Leclerc v Verstappen 2.0 maybe, or maybe even Carlos Sainz, because he obviously was looking very, very good after Jeddah, so don't count the Spaniard out at all. It might be two Ferraris versus the lone Red Bull as Perez struggles down to P4, but what a race for us. P7, and the pace wasn't that bad, you know, in terms of the fastest lap. We did very well, actually. The pace was bad at the end of the stints, I will admit, but in the middle and the start, I think we did better to protect the tyres, a little bit better than we did at Jeddah, so really, really good stuff there. Points on the board for the team, 6 to be exact. That is massive. 6 points on the board just gives us that breathing room to be ahead of all the teams with no points on the board at all, and gives us a bit of ambition and kind of, you know, emphasis to keep pushing on with upgrades to try and keep up with Alpine and McLaren. It's going to be difficult, yes. They have, you know, Alpine have 2 drivers who can score points. McLaren at the moment with Lando as well. You can see, though, we're ahead of McLaren right now. So that's great work from us. To be P6 at this stage now, separating Alpine and McLaren's awesome. But look at Ferrari. Ferrari lead the Constructors' Championship, and they led the Drivers' Championship with Leclerc. So, you know, it's very much game on in the game here for the championship. And it's so tight at the top. There's only 3 points covering the top 3 drivers. So, fantastic stuff to watch as an observer outside of the title fight for now. And for us, it's still good stuff, good fighting between Alpine, McLaren, and ourselves in this championship. Guys, if you did enjoy this episode, the first points on the board, then be sure to hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.